now.
Hi, I'm Sherry Heil, and this is Be an Idealist, where we talk about how to create your ideal life. And I'm very excited today because I have my very first guest for us to speak with, and it's Nancy Chorpenning. She is a business coach coaching women business owners, and she also leads a group of business owners, women business owners, where they kind of learn from each other. The reason I chose Nancy to come on and talk with us is she commented on one of my LinkedIn posts about how you can't map your journey to success until you know what success means to you. And the to you is what really got to me. As I was telling Nancy, when I first started out, people defined success by how much money was in my bank. And so I never felt successful for what I was doing until I stepped back and realized, wait a minute, I'm at every single one of my kids' functions. I'm on the board of my son's marching band. I'm home when they get home. I can drive them everywhere they can need to go. I can pay for all the events that need to be paid for. And I'm growing my business and my skill set. So I'm successful. And so that really touched me. So I'm happy to have you here, Nancy, to talk about what success means to you. Do you come across women like that feel like they have this societal pressure of what success is, and they have a hard time really grasping what their own personal definition of success is?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for inviting me to chat with you today, Sherry. I appreciate it. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, first of all, I encountered this when I left corporate America. I refer to myself as a corporate refugee. And after 25 plus years in corporate America as a corporate executive, I said, I can do this. And I pushed the eject button and then proceeded to make every single mistake in the book. So I have learned a lot too. I just didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
And trying to find a way to start has actually been a matter of excavating through a lot of dreck out there.
Mm-hmm.
And the it always comes back to what is your success destination and creating your own version of what success looks like to you. We're all different. And the external world are the ones that say, well, how much money do you make? Well, are you happy when you get up in the morning? Are you
Mm-hmm.
helping other people? Are you doing good things? And in your case, you have managed to achieve multiple objectives
Mm-hmm.
of being with your kids and using the wonderful flexibility that there is in working on your own, as well as really developing yourself. And so our CEO School for Women program, we always start with a real deep dive into creating a vision for a business you love. And it's because, first of all, we kind of have to work out all of those voices and recordings that try to tell us what success means.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are definitely the realities of life. We got mortgages to pay and bills to pay. So yeah, money is part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you close your eyes and you think, okay, what does it look like 5 years from now in my ideal world? And we really delve into that. In fact, right now, as we're chatting in Chicago, there is a group of my NABO sisters. NABO is the National Association of Women Business Owners. And there's a group of my NABO sisters who are going through a workshop that I created and recorded. And they're actually going through this right now to really define their success destination and operationalize it and how to operationalize it. Because I often liken it to, a vacation.
Mm-hmm.
How many of us walk out into the garage, jump in the car, and say, okay, now we're going on vacation? You need to do a little bit of planning, and you need to know where you're headed, or else you may have your bathing suit in the suitcase and you're headed to the mountains to ski.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's that simple. What do you want? And very few people are ever asked that question. So we got to ask ourselves, what do you really want? And delve into it. And so we end up with some very, very um, interesting experiences and processes. It's also one of the reasons that I actually coach some women who are getting ready to eject from corporate America. Um, because, and I'll give you just one example. One of these women, very accomplished digital marketer with a publicly held company, and she said, well, I want to be home with my kids,
Mm-hmm.
so I guess I'll start my own digital agency. And I said, really? Is that, she said, I'm really good at it. And I said, I have no doubt you're good at it. But, what is it about that? Does that excite you? She goes, no,
Right.
not really. It's just what I'm good at. And just because you're good at something doesn't mean it feeds all those needs.
Right. And sometimes
So,
it's hard
yeah,
to know what you're good at until you
yes.
start exploring some other things.
Absolutely. Well, we used a one of the tools that I use is a behavioral assessment called the Berkman method,
Okay.
um, and it's a wonderful tool. Um, but it was listening to her talk to me about her whole life, and I reacted and said, when I hear your voice, you get really excited when you talk about your volunteer work.
Mm-hmm.
And she feels very strongly about supporting public education and improving public education.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, yeah, but that's not a full time job. Fast forward about 8 months, she's the CEO of a nonprofit that is all about funding teachers and administrators who want to do creative programming in the public schools.
Excellent. Great story. Great
So
story.
it's possible. It takes time. And that's the other thing nobody tells you is
Right.
it's not going to take months. It's going to take years.
Yes.
It just does. There's no straight line.
And the hardest thing about that is even if you know it, because I've been on this journey, I've been on my own for 15 years,
Hmm.
and I've reinvented myself a few times in those years. And when I started Amplified Concepts a little over 2 years ago, which is a completely new business model, there was
Right.
no map I could follow. There's no footprint I could, walk in, and follow. I'm developing a new wheel,
Mm.
and I have friends and I have people who love me and care about me ask me why I'm not further along than what I am. And I know why I'm not further along, but I finally had to start telling myself, quit justifying yourself, quit explaining yourself. Let them have those doubts. They can have them. I don't need to expend the energy to take those doubts away from them, but I
That's
don't need to
about
carry
them.
them, right? I don't need to carry those doubts on my shoulders.
Right.
Let them have them. If they need to have the doubts, let them have them. But I have a vision and I have a destination, and that's what I need to focus on, not spending
Absolutely.
energy trying to explain myself to other people.
Absolutely. That was actually one of the things that led to us starting CEO School. When I was still living up in Atlanta and where we met, this was an in-person program. It's now become virtual and asynchronous to
Hmm.
a degree. But it was because trying to find a trusted group of women who understand the process of what you're going through and don't think it's weird.
Hmm.
And I mean, that's important. It is. Uh, even our dearest loved ones may not understand what it takes to start your own business and to
Hmm.
grow it and to scale it. And there are so many aspects to it. And what a difference it makes when you know that there are people who know enough about what you're doing in your business that if you're having a crap day, you can pick up the phone and have somebody who's going to talk you off the ledge or just
Hmm.
listen,
Hmm.
or tell you to snap out of it.
Or
You
remind you
know,
of all your successes. So I know for
thank
me,
you.
sometimes, when I first went out on my own, I was one of the first people, I think you know this, doing social media, me along with Toby Bloomberg. And
Right.
because we were both so new in something that was just emerging, I got a
Hmm.
lot of speaking engagements, a lot of writing opportunities. So at the time, if you Googled my name, there were pages and pages of hits. But I still had that imposter syndrome, especially because I was doing something so new.
Hmm.
And I didn't feel like I knew anything about it. But I had a great mentor tell me, you know more than the person you're working with. That makes you the expert.
Right.
But you'd still get that imposter syndrome. And when I would feel it, I would Google my name and be like, okay, I've accomplished this. This is who
Wow.
I am.
Yep.
you know, so just having what you've accomplished. And even now, I'll sit down and make a list of, or I'll go on my website and read my award winning projects or whatever, or something to remind me of who I am and what I can do.
Well,
Because when
but
you
you're
hit that
more than
wall,
what you do, too.
that's true. That's true.
And
But just knowing
yeah,
what you've already
but you're on
accomplished
the path.
and knowing knows
It's,
that you have what it takes.
yeah, yep, absolutely. It's so important. And we tend instead to be our own harshest critics.
That's true.
Um, and we have the tapes that may say you're not enough, you're never going to finish this, all of that. And it, I think it very often takes a conscious effort to move from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. I find women have a lot easier time with that than men, which is why I
Hmm.
shifted my practice to work with women. Men just want to be right. They want to win. They want to be right. And when I first started my business and I was working with men, I had to fire my very first client. I kind of needed the money, um, but all he wanted to do was argue with me.
Hmm.
And one day I went in and I said, you know, you're wasting your money and my time
Right.
because you're not getting out of this what you want. And I knew that he just wanted somebody to argue with, but I wasn't about to get paid for that. And
I think
that was a
therapists will take your
very,
money.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's, but it was in a way freeing. It was terrifying,
Yeah.
but it helped me understand that I really needed to get clearer on what I wanted, and most importantly, at that moment, who I could help, and
Right.
how did I identify them, and what was it that they wanted that they may not perceive. That's one of the hardest, and to help them with that exploration, because I am insatiably curious and I ask questions all the time.
One of the things I mentioned before we started this is that this video series, the Be an Idealist video series, is my way of practicing before planning. And I have done that quite a bit, which is the practice before plan. And I think a lot of what you're talking about is that practice before plan. You jump out there with what you think you're going to do, but then along the way, you're going to start learning what doesn't work, what does work, what other opportunities there are that you didn't even think about,
Right,
who's going to support you that you didn't even know was willing to support you, who's not going to support you that you thought you were going to count on. I mean,
right.
all these variables. And I feel like so many people get stuck in the planning stage and never do. Whereas I want to start telling people practice before you plan. Just start doing. Don't have a rough sketch, have a rough draft, and get out there and practice and then plan along the way.
Well, I think that determining your success destination, your vision, is the first step in planning. And if you don't start there, how, and I say this all the time, if you don't know where you're going, how will you know when you get there?
Right.
So, and people say, but what if it changes? I'm like, good, it
Yeah.
should change. As you said, you've reinvented yourself. I've reinvented myself. And you find out, you learn. That's the cool thing. And that is something that I think is so important in a really being an entrepreneur, is that we learn and we grow and we change.
Yep.
That is part
Absolutely.
of it.
And we find out
And
who we are.
yes, yes, it is definitely a journey of self-discovery. We find out what we're really good at.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I like to tell my clients that I help them with is I like to give my clients options. So often I'll meet people and they are living between the letters of A and B and they think it's the whole alphabet.
Yeah.
And I like to introduce them to more letters. I'm not going to tell anybody, well, you should do this and you should do that. But I'm going to say, well, have you thought about, what about this? Have you ever considered? And it's like I have watched that change businesses and lives. And that makes just such a difference. And see, to me, success is watching someone else grow and learn and maybe get that step up, that leg up, that, somebody to, I always say, I'm holding a mirror up and I'm telling you who I see.
Mm-hmm.
Because if again, if you're like me and you're a corporate refugee, um, you have, you may have really the perception of what others have been telling you for a long time.
Right, right. And you have a perception of what you're supposed to look like and how you're supposed to present yourself. So
Yes,
we spoke about this a little bit before we started recording, that you mentioned the difference between corporate America and going out on your own and how vastly different it is. And I told you those are some of my least favorite clients. I'm finding out. It sounds like I need to send them to you before I start working with them.
yep,
And the reason is they're so used to having people do things for them, and they're so used to having a budget to work with. And when they go out on their own, they start spending their money on
yes,
hiring assistants or hiring people, and they expect to have these beautiful websites and beautiful email campaigns and beautiful everything social media and big budgets. And 9 out of 10 times they go out of business before they even start, because they spent
that's
all of
it.
their money on things to make themselves look bigger the way they're used to in corporate America.
Absolute. That is spot on. Um, and as I tell people, I made every mistake in the book when I ejected. That was part of it because I started my business in 2006, right around the time you did too. Um, and at that time, I was doing things very corporately. I had very corporate letterhead and I had very corporate um, business cards. And I was just, clueless. And then I discovered, because I love technology, that there were shiny toys everywhere and I could try it. One of the things I just recorded for this workshop that's going on now is has everybody now heard about sales funnels, and that sales funnels are the answer, the end all and be all. And it just makes me nuts. But I actually created a planning funnel, and it starts with your vision and mission. And if you don't invest the time there, you're gonna eventually.
Mhm.
You gotta get that, and then just expect that you're gonna reinvent,
Yeah.
that you're
And then
gonna learn.
also, and I'm sure you have this, you need to have little milestones to that destination.
Mhm.
I mentioned this in a previous video that I did about when I was a salesperson. My first sales job, I was an IT recruiter back
Uh-huh.
in the late 90s. Great time to be an IT
Oh
recruiter.
yeah.
And we measured our sales with each increment success. So if I made 50 phone calls that day, that was a success because I knew how many
Right.
phone calls it took to get a job order. And then if I
Right.
got 3 job orders that week, that was a success because I knew how many job orders it took to get an interview. And then if
Right.
I got 5 interviews that week, that was a success because I knew how many interviews it took to make a placement. So we measured every single milestone. And that's how
Hmm.
we planned too. If we knew our numbers, we knew
Right.
what we had to do on a daily basis to hit our final goal. It wasn't this
Exactly.
kind of let me pray to the gods and drink my tea the right way and position my chair just so and wear blue on Tuesday to hit my goal.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. There are no panaceas. And I wish somebody just smacked me in the beginning and said, look, it's going to take months and years. Just deal with it that way. And also, there's so much thought required going into it, yet we feel as though we should be doing something. Well,
Hmm.
thinking is doing something. It
Hmm.
just, I think a lot of us mistake tactics for strategies.
Hmm.
And so that's in that planning funnel. We start out very high level, then you go and you start working out a business model. And since we started back in 2009, I think, using the lean startup approach, the business model canvas, where you can actually map out what you think is happening and get that minimum viable product and test it before you basically sell the store.
Hmm.
um, it makes such a difference, and it gives you a way to tell your business story to people you might need, whether it is a partner or a supplier or somebody, uh, just depending on what you're doing, to give you the feedback. Because if if we do it just from our own perspective, it's never going to work.
Right, right.
And
That's my first encounter with a new client. We do the rat in the kitchen workshop.
uh-huh.
And basically, the whole point of that workshop is to get out of your head. Because when you think of marketing, you think, I want to sell my product, I want to sell my service, I want to tell people
Right.
what I do. And I don't want to come across rude, but I do want to come across blunt. Nobody cares about what you're selling or what you're doing, they care about their problem. And if you and I were sitting and having a glass of wine as friends, I'm not going to tell you I need this type of person. I'm going to
Right.
tell you about the problems I have. And
Exactly.
so if we position our messaging and our marketing to be empathetic, I say great marketing starts with great empathy to the
Yeah.
people we're serving, and
Right.
get out of our own head. That's I think mistake number one of new business owners.
Absolutely.
And I made
Yeah.
that mistake many times.
Me too. I thought, well, everybody doesn't everybody think this way?
Right,
No, no, not at all. And
right.
those are harsh lessons,
Yes,
but it's most important that you learn them and you keep going.
yes.
And uh, the other thing that I see a lot is that we are entering this in such with such a sense of scarcity. And I have a I have a real propensity to to having an abundance mindset,
Hmm.
and that has changed everything. I find that it is more true of women, because we tend to be much more communal,
Hmm.
and we are able to ask for help. And as long as you know where you can turn,
Right.
that's the real challenge. Is, do you know um, really what's up, and who you can trust?
It's
Um, there are lots of people out there,
and
and
lots of
there
services.
yep, and there are lots more people who are feeling exactly the same way.
Right.
And I encourage people to find a group of women,
Yep.
who are, but you want to find people that you want to learn from,
Right.
but who are going through the same things, maybe in completely different industries. But even in, people say, well, they're in marketing too, so they're a competitor. Well,
Mhm.
golly, folks, there's enough out there for everybody. Um, but I understand that that's why the trust piece is so important. But it can turn into collaborations. I have watched this happen with the members of CEO school collaborating with each other.
Mhm.
It is still going on with my initial group, 6 years later.
Mhm.
Um, and we have become deep, deep friends. And so that when we're confused about something or just having a crap day, pick up the phone and say, damn, I am trying to do this and I need some perspective. So,
Um, I People would ask me about who my mentors are, and my answer was always it depends on who I need at the time. And
absolutely.
I've always been a lot more comfortable around men growing up because I have two older brothers. I raised two boys. A lot of my friends were men. And it really took me a long time to understand the unique relationship women have with women because I didn't grow up with relationships with women. Um,
Mhm.
I'm going to give a shout out to Sandy Hoffman from Women in Technology. And she was such a great mentor to so many people. And she really was the first one to open that door for me.
Neat.
Um, and then you mentioned too about how competition versus collaboration. I have a quick story on that. When I launched Amplified Concepts, which is the freelancer collaborative, I
Yes.
sometimes give the quick elevator pitch. It's an agency on demand. We can put teams together for you at half the cost of an agency. And I thought, well, I'm going to be competing with agencies, and so I was kind of working through that. Well, one of the people I met opened my eyes out of, no, I'm a resource to agencies. They need to hire teams as
Bingo.
they're scaling and growing. And so now I have a number of agency clients. And of course, I've got to now be careful about not stepping on toes and making sure I'm reciprocating support
Yep.
and everything else and building those strong relationships. But who you think you're competing with may be the person who's going to be your best client. Um,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely. And that goes back to that business model process is thinking about really getting to know your customers and spending time to understand them. And you do that by talking with them and asking them questions and then shutting your mouth and opening your ears.
very good. So thank you for being here. How can people get
Absolutely.
in touch with you or find out more about what you're doing?
Sure. Well, the name of my company is called C-Suite Advisors. So c-suiteadvisors.com. We have a couple of different programs. The focus right now, as I said, is CEO School for Women. And we also have a website, ceoschoolforwomen.com. Imagine that. And we have a Facebook page and a number of different Facebook groups because we do lots of different things and have a wonderful, wonderful group of folks. And one of the things we're planning for anybody who's interested in sort of finding that circle of women is we're going to begin a virtual group coaching cohort in March. So I'd be delighted to hear from anybody. You can reach out, as I said, via one of the websites or the messenger on Facebook. But thank you so much, Sherry. It's really been fun chatting with you.
Yes, I knew it would be. Thank you for being my first guest.
Oh,
And
thank you.
hopefully we'll get more going on people will start living their dreams and having an ideal day.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye bye.